Helo, a chroeso I Sesiwn Stori Llyfrgelloedd Ora I ddathlu wythnos genedlaethol adrodd stori. Hello and welcome to Ora Library's storytelling session to celebrate National Storytelling Week. Fiona Collins ydw I, and that's my name, Fiona, and I'm a storyteller. A bydd hwn yn sesiwn ddwyieithog I hwyluso chi sy'n siarad Cymraeg ac yn arbennig o bobl sy'n dysgu Cymraeg. I'm going to tell the story in Welsh and in English, so if you're learning Welsh, this will be really helpful, at least I hope so. A dyma stori o fawr dali. The story comes from just down the road from where I live. It comes from Betws Gwerfyl Goch, just on the other side of Corwen. And it starts the way all the best stories start. Amser maith yn ôl. Once upon a time. Just tu allan I pentre Betws Gwerfyl Goch, oedd Dewin yn byw. And this wizard, his castle just outside the village, oedd yn berson drwg. He was so horrible, he used to go down to the village and kidnap and steal away the young people, the children. I fod yn ceithweision ar ei gyfer fo, and whatever work he gave them, they had to do it. A roedd Gareth, un o bobl bach, a chafodd ei cipio gan y Dewin. Gareth got kidnapped by the wizard, and for days and for weeks and for months he was captured there at the castle, a roedd rhaid iddo fo wneud pe bynnag oedd y Dewin dweud wrtho fo. And one day when he was doing one of those jobs that the wizard had given him, working in the garden, he said, "Oh, will I never get away?" And he said it out loud, achos oedd o eisiau siarad gyda rhywun, ond yn anffodus, oedd y Dewin yn dod hebio. And the wizard heard him. "So," he said, "you want to get away, do you?" "Well, dwi'n mynd tymor da heddiw. I'm feeling quite good. I'll make a bargain with you. I'm going to give you a task to do. Os ti'n gallu cwblhau y task, and you've got to finish it before the sun sets, you could go free. Ond na fydd yn hawdd I ti wneud. It's not going to be easy for you. Tid gyda fi." And he led Gareth through the garden, across the field, to where there was a hill, moel, a little round-topped hill, a llawn dop o goed, all covered with trees, oak trees, ash trees, derwen, onnen, sycamore, everything you could imagine. And the wizard said, "I want some firewood. Dod â nhw I gyd I lawr, cyn machlud y wawr. And if you've cut them all up, sawn them all up before sunset, you can go free." Yeah, but it won't be easy for you. Ac yn chwerthin, aeth o I ffordd. And Gareth stood there staring at the hill. There were hundreds of trees. It would take him weeks. And he only had one day. But, do you know, however hard something seems, os ti ddim yn ymgeisio, how would you know whether you could do it unless you try? Felly, dyma fo'n. Gafal, he got hold of his saw, his trusty rusty saw, ac I fyny y bryn gyda fo, and he started sawing down the trees. And at last the tree daeth I lawr. A wedyn dyma fo'n dechrau'n iarach. But by the time the sun was high in the sky, he'd only cut down 3 trees, and there was still about 997 still to do. A tra oedd o'n sefyll yna, and digalonedig, he was feeling so disheartened. Daeth rhywun I fyny y bryn. It was the wizard's youngest daughter. Tegwedd was her name. As she'd been watching Gareth, oedd o'n gallu gweld, oedd o'n gweithio'n galed, she wanted to help him. A felly dyma hi yn dod gyda basged dros ei wrag. And when she put down the basket, she said, "I've brought you a picnic. Come and sit down in the shade. Eat. Codi nerth." Well, he sat down. A dyma hi and Dad pacio basket. But before she sat down with him to eat, she took something from the bottom of the basket, a silver cloth, and she just wiped it once, dwywaith, across his saw, lle oedd yn gorwedd ar y llaw. And as soon as she did that, the saw jumped up off the ground and all by itself started sawing down the trees and sawing them up. And by the time they'd finished the picnic, oedd y moel yn foel and all the wood was piled up in a heap. Syndod mawr! I Gareth. But he wasn't so surprised that he forgot his manners. Diolch yn fawr, he said. Croeso, she said. Then she packed up her things. Ta-ta, medda hi, ac I ffwrdd â hi. And as Tegwydd was going down the hill on one side, dyma'r dewin yn dod I fyny o'r ochr arall. But when the wizard saw that Gareth had done the job, he wasn't glad. He was mad. He said, you couldn't have done this without help. Felly, stim bargain rhwngddo ni. Instead, I'm going to give you a second task. If you can do it tomorrow, cyn machlud o awr, you can go free. Ond na fydd yn hawdd I ti wneud. It's not going to be easy. Tid gyda fi. And he led Gareth down the hill, across his garden, to the very edge of the wizard's land, lle oedd afan yn llifo heibio. And on the bank of that river, they stood looking across, and on the other side there was a cliff going up straight and steep and sheer into the sky. Dyma'r dewin yn deud, at the top of that hill, the top of that cliff, there's a nest. In the nest, there's a golden egg. Tid ar wy air I mi cyn machlud o awr, and as long as you give me that golden egg before sunset, you can go free. Ond na fydd yn hawdd I ti wneud. Thought I fo. And when the wizard had gone, Gareth stood there staring. The river was too deep to wade through, too wide to jump across, too fast to swim. Of course, there wasn't a boat, there wasn't a bridge. He couldn't see how to do it. But dyma fo'n cofio sut oedd Tegwydd yn helpu fo. And remembering how Tegwydd had helped him, he thought, perhaps she'll come again tomorrow. Ac roedd tipyn o obaith yn ei awlon, and with some hope in his heart, he was able to sleep. A diwrnod wedyn, bore braf, dyma fo'n cerdded fyny ac I lawr ar hyd yr afon. He was walking up and down, trying to work out how to get across. Pan dyma Tegwydd yn dod ato fo. And when she arrived, she smiled, and she took off her shoe. She held up her shoe and she said, wish that my shoe was a boat. Well, he did so. Ac yn syth dyma cwch bach in yr afon. A dyma y dau yn mynd I mewn i'r cwch, and they rowed that little boat over to the other side, climbed out at the bottom of the cliff. Gareth looked up at it. He couldn't see anywhere where he could grip with his fingers or toes. It was sheer and straight and steep, more serth. Ond dyma Tegwydd yn deud. She held up her hand and she said, wish that my hand was a ladder. Dyma fo'n neud. A wedyn, dyma ysgol cig a chnawd. Her hand became a ladder of flesh and blood. But she said to him, when you get to the top, the bird will come out to defend its nest. Take this lump of meat, throw it as far as you can, and when the bird flies down, ti'n gallu nôl o fwy a dod yn ôl gyda fo. So he took the meat, put it in his pocket, a dyma fo'n dechrau dringo fyny, up and up until at last he could see sticks and twigs, part of the nest, and sticio allan dros top y craig. And then he saw something else sticking out too. A great big head of a great big bird with a huge beak, and crack, medda fo. Gareth, he quickly found the meat and he threw it as far as he could. And the bird, dyma'r aderyn yn agor ei adenydd a hedfan lawr ar ôl y cig. And the wind from the wings of that great bird was so strong, Gareth thought he was going to get blown away from the ladder, and he clung on tight. A wedyn, oedd yr ysgol yn plygu o dan fo. He could feel it bending. He thought the ladder was going to break, but then the wind eased, ac oedd o'n saff ac yn sound. And when he was sure he was okay, he reached up and felt around in the nest, a dyma fo. He could feel the cool curve of the golden egg. Ac yn ofalus iawn, because you've got to be really careful when you're carrying an egg. Dyma fo'n dod I lawr, right I lawr yr ysgol, and when he got back to the bottom, Tegwydd said, have you got the egg? Do, medda fo. Oh, da iawn, she said. Wish that my hand was back again. I don't want it to be a ladder all the time. Dyma fo'n dymuno. And there was her hand, just the way... Oh no, it wasn't just the way it was. Oedd bys bach, tipyn bach yn gam. Her little finger, when he saw it was bent, he remembered how he'd pressed on the ladder and he said, "Oh, I've hurt you, I'm sorry." "Paid phoeni," medda hi, "pob beth yn iawn, don't worry." And they got in the boat. A dyma nhw'n croesi'r afon, and when they got out on the other side, she said to him, "Wish that the boat was my shoe again." A felly nath o, and she picked her shoe out of the water, shook out a few drops of water, put it on. "Ta-ta," medda hi, ac I ffwrdd â hi. A tra aeth Tegwydd I ffwrdd o hon, the wizard was coming from the other side. And when he saw Gareth on the wrong side of the river, dim arwydd bod o wedi bod o drosodd, he started to laugh. But when Gareth got out the golden egg and gave it to him, that wiped the grin off his face. He wasn't glad. He was mad. He said, "Mae rhywun wedi dy helpu di. Felly stim bagin rhyngddo ni. I'm not going to set you free. Instead, I'm going to give you a third task to do. And this time, I'm going to be watching to make sure no one can help you. You meet me, bore fory, gyda'r gwawr, tu allan i'r castell." And then he went away. And Gareth thought, "I've got to meet him at sunrise by the castle. If he's there, nobody will be able to help me." A doedd dim gobaith yn ein halon. He didn't have any hope in his heart. He couldn't sleep all night. But the next morning, when the first lemon light of dawn was in the sky, Gareth was walking up the hill towards the castle wall. Because however impossible something seems, os ti ddim yn geisio, how would you know whether you could do it or not if you never even tried? And when he reached the wall, dyma'r dewin yn sefyll yna, a mae'r dewin yn pwyntio fyny. He pointed up at the ramparts and he said, "There are 3 birds on the rampart. I have changed my daughters into those 3 seagulls. If you can tell me which one's my youngest daughter, Tegwydd, you can go free." Ond na fydd yn hawdd I ti wneud. And he snapped his fingers, a dyma'r tri yn dod law, ac yn sefyll mewn rwng o flaen Gareth, and Gareth looked from one to the next, to the next. All the birds looked exactly the same. He didn't know what to say, but then as he looked from one to the other, the one at this end, it just moved one of its feet, just a tiny bit. A dyma'n tynnu sylw Gareth, and so he looked down at his feet, and he saw how one of the claws on that bird's foot was a bit crooked, tipyn bach yn gam, and he remembered how Tegwydd's finger had been bent when it was the ladder, and he said, "Dyma hi, dyma Tegwydd." And of course he was right. And with those words, the power of the wizard was broken, and the 3 birds changed back into 3 girls. And dyma Tegwydd, the one he'd chosen, was right. And the wizard was so mad, he shook his fist, and he stamped his foot. And when he stamped his foot, dyma'r daear yn agor, a dyma fo mynd lawr, dum, 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 and the earth closed over the wizard, and he was never seen again. And Gareth and Tegwydd, they found the keys, and they went round the castle and they unlocked all the dungeons and all the cells and all the prisons, and they let out all the people who'd been captured by the Dewin, by the wizard, and they all went home. And Gareth went home to his little house in Better Square fel Goch, a pan aeth o adra, aeth Tegwydd gyda fo. Tegwydd went back with him. Dyma fy stori I chi. Celwydd neu wir ydy hi? Stori ffug neu stori wir? Yr un ydy ystyr. These words come from me to you. Are they lies or are they true? And if they are, or if they're not, so what? Diolch am wrando. Thank you for listening. Bye.